The objective is to improve the quality of education and the morale of our classroom teachers. We believe significant strides can be made by reducing excess facility capacity, increasing efficiencies, and redirecting savings into salary increases for teachers and classroom personnel. One of the initial recommendations by the VAC reflected a savings of $7 million. However, this would not be sufficient to address salary issues. Therefore, our ability to help close any gap requires the Board of Education to go further by also restructuring to realize operating efficiencies as a result of redistricting. Finally, whereas Carroll County Public Schools enrollments will continue to decline, the majority of members of the Board of Commissioners are not likely to support substantial tax increases. Increases to Carroll County Public School funding will likely need to come from economic growth or the state. For this reason, it is imperative Carroll County Public Schools comprehensively reduce its cost structure to parallel enrollment declines. We know this process is painful, but it is necessary. However, we firmly believe the end result will lead to better compensated teachers and classroom personnel and a higher quality school system.
I want to address for a moment the $4 million. We appreciate the governor's gesture, but I want to point out that until the legislature goes through a session, that money cannot be deemed certain. It's still uncertain at this point in time. But even if we had that $4 million today, I want to point out that it doesn't change the fact that we have too many schools, too many vacant seats, and inefficiencies that are consuming precious tax dollars. And by consuming those tax dollars the way they are, they're making it more difficult for us to appropriately pay our teachers. And that's where the rubber meets the road with the teacher in the classroom. And therefore, it's my position that we must downsize. Now, suppose, just hypothetically, we started over, hypothetically. This is going to be a contentious decision. If we started over from scratch and came up with 5 new schools, 3 new schools, 7 new schools, there is absolutely no way, in my judgment, to go through this process without having contentiousness. So in light of that, I think we have to be realistic. And as an experienced business person, I personally believe that the worst thing we could do at this point in time would be to delay the process and do nothing. And for that reason, I stand with my Board of Commissioners, I stand with the Board of Education in recommending that Carroll County proceed forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Weaver.
All right. We are in a situation where we do have to do something. Doing nothing is not an option at this point. And the commissioners, I do support our original objectives of the commissioners and what we have to do. However, I was elected to represent my constituents, and I need to push for their concerns. I don't think we need to close any high school in this county or any building that is in good repair. And I think if we would go back, we have to about January 30th, if my calculations are correct, to revisit and look at some of these items. Any project that increases capital expenditures down the road is the wrong decision, in my own opinion on this. But I am here to represent my constituents, and I intend to do that with whatever it takes. So thank you for listening.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you. My position is that we should not delay this process. Putting this process off for a year, I don't think it'll do anything to help us out. Just be more divisiveness between the county and community arguing against community. I'm not for that at all. We've come to this, we haven't come, they're looking at the decision right now, they'll vote on it. I think we should need to move ahead with that. And with that, I wish to express my confidence that the Board of Education, the school system, and the Boundary Adjustment Committee have looked at all the options that were presented to them, and that they will make a decision based on what is best for Carroll County Public Schools and the children of our county. And I do believe that they have looked at everything. Thank you.
However, there'll be a lot of discussion about whether the money that has been proposed will actually be there, whether it will survive the budget process, what that looks like. But I'm here to remind you that even if it is there, even if you brought it with you today, which if you did, that's great. Is that solves a piece of the puzzle, but it doesn't solve the other piece of the puzzle that still has to be accomplished by streamlining our system, or the piece that we have to solve. So if one piece takes out the other piece, we're still short. And if we put the entire community through this painful process to not get this issue addressed, to not get it resolved, then I think we've done a lousy job of taking the community down a path that it didn't need to get out in the first place. But the problem is we can't leave it unresolved. The only thing I would say otherwise is I believe the time for decision is upon us. And I think for us to respond as the Board of Commissioners, which is going to happen fairly soon in terms of funding options, any other implementation options that there might be, any other things that we might consider, we got to know what the decision is. We've got to know what's going to happen. So we have to know what course the Board of Education is going to take. And I believe that includes not only the recommendation that's before you right now, but the lingering recommendation, or if that's considered as well, of the other schools, because when we get the full playing field of what you're going to do, and we get the full understanding of what we may be able to get, not only now, but as the process goes forward at the state level, then it's really incumbent upon us to try to piece together the rest to get us as close as we can, and that's really what has to go forward. So appreciate everybody's participation, but that is the challenge in front of us, and I think it's important we don't lose sight of that.
I have always said that for me, it's more about people and not about buildings. And I continue to believe that. I have been a big proponent of making sure that on the back side of this, the most important folks, our kids, are taken care of, and certainly that our teachers and those that we put in front of our children is the number one priority. And in order to get that, to get to that place, some tough, challenging decisions have to be made. So, again, I want to commend all of those that have been involved in this process. I will also point out that I think we are in uncharted territory here. I don't know that this county has ever been to this place before. I've had a lot of senior citizens in my district come to me and tell me, you know, Commissioner, when Tawnytown High School was proposed to be closed, and they were going to build Francis Scott Key 8 miles out of town, we thought that the town was doomed. It's still there. So I hear it from all aspects of where I am.
The uncertainty of the legislative success of a proposed budget. And as we understand it, the governor's proposed is a proposed budget and not other money somewhere else. And that's one of the clarifications we'd like to seek today to reinforce, as our interpretation that it's proposed money would have to go through the legislative process and then have to be approved, even at the amounts mentioned, or some amount.
Thank you, Senator, and I would like to thank the commissioners and the school board for allowing me to come and represent the governor. I just want to go just through sort of a timeline of facts, how we got to where we are today. What happened was the governor had expressed some concern about the closing of schools after reading news reports about it a few months ago, and he wanted to help. So we fast forward into November of this year, the governor received a letter from Delegate Shoemaker regarding some of the school closings in his district, and asked the governor to intervene through his office. The governor's staff had meetings with the Carroll County delegation in terms of this issue. On Wednesday, the governor had a quick meeting with Senator Reedy, and the governor had said that he would forward over the funding for that, and so that's how we got here. Let me make it very clear that this is a stopgap measure. It is intended to be a one-time grant for this process. And the reason that being is that in June of this year, 2016, there's a report due on the adequacy study as it relates to the geographic costs of education and its expense. So it is our hope, it is the governor's hope that once that report comes through, there would be a more clear path or a clear picture in terms of funding due to the adequacy study. However, if that study is not complete by June, and fiscal years begins July 1st, the governor does intend to continue to help fund that. Help fund. The governor also wants to make it clear that in his letter that he wrote, he does express that it is his hope with this funding that the closing of schools will be deferred. However, I am here with the message that the funding is not contingent upon your decision either way. How did we get to the number of $4 million? So in the 5 years of the fiscal 5 years from starting fiscal year 11 through fiscal year 17, the jurisdictions of Carroll, Garrett, Kent County had significant drops in enrollment. And those percentages were, for instance, in Carroll County, the enrollment dropped 7%. In Garrett County, the enrollment dropped 11%. And in Kent County, it dropped 4%. However, the change in education funding was much higher than the enrollment drops. So, for instance, in Carroll County, the short change or the cut in funding was 9%. In Garrett County, the cut was 17, you can say 18%. And in Kent County, it was a 7% drop. So the governor felt that these jurisdictions had been treated unfairly as it relates to the proportion of cuts in funding and also in terms of enrollment decline. So coming up with the $4 million, this basically comes out in the math, and believe me, I'm not a math expert, but from talking to our budget people, it equates to about a 25% increase, restoration of the funding. So.
You keep talking about the grants, and historically, when we get a grant, it's money that's already been allocated and is there to grant to people. And we're getting, I think, mixed up in that term, grants, because we get grants all the time that's already allocated money. Is this money that is being placed in the budget, or is it already money that exists to hand as a grant?
This is not money that's already existing. This is in the fiscal year 2017.
So it's a proposed budget.
In the proposed budget coming up that you will be voting on.
Because I will tell you, the word grants is, a grant is something that's already allocated and you can give away. And I think that's been a confusion of the term being used grant, because it's not already allocated to be given away.
Just as a point of clarification, Jim, I think we're speaking the same language. It's not that the governor put the money in. He put the proposal in the budget before the money.
If the adequacy study, studying the Thornton formula that should have been done 5 years ago, isn't done by next year, the governor is willing to go back to the well and provide this stopgap funding again in his proposed budget for the FY18.
Which is also appreciated. And I guess if we had a crystal ball and knew what April 12th was, or whenever the end of your legislative session was, how these funds really fall out and how much a piece of that pie of our total needs in the future, that would be helpful. But we can't do that.
I used the illustration the other day that I wish I could have brought one of those Happy Gilmore $4 million checks with me to hand over to you all, but it does have to go through the process.
We would accept it if you brought it.
If the adequacy study has not been done by next summer, like it's anticipated today, that the governor is going to, re-entertain this notion of providing stopgap funding for jurisdictions like ours and Kent County and Garrett, like he did this year.
But not to avoid closures, just to deal with whatever shortfall.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
$8.5 million worth of decreases from 2009 up to this point, which considerably put us behind the eight ball as far as compensation improvements to the system. And we've had to take drastic actions, including losing 50 teacher positions last year as a result of that, just to make ends meet and pay at least 1 of 2 years of increase in employees, the base salary of employees. So we really appreciate, and again, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for your participation in that. So the 3 buckets, as Commissioner Howard put forward, are us reducing our operating costs, increases from the county, the local government, and increases from the state government. We aren't bringing our teachers up to competitive salaries. We're nowhere close to that. But what we want to do is stop the continuing loss that teachers are receiving and employees are receiving as compared with other counties. So make no mistake, there is no compensation package that we can put together this year that will fix 6 years of no step increases and 5 years of no cost of living increases. It just won't happen. So what we're trying to do is work on a compensation package that provides raises or compensation increases comparable to what other counties are receiving. That with inflationary increases and no other improvements is about a $14 million increase in our budget from this year's compared to next year. It's $11 million different than what the county has allocated in their current 5-year operating plan. That everybody's going to have their hand out, not just the 3 counties, but everybody else. What about us? What about giving money to us? I've heard from Prince George's County and St. Mary's County who expressed concerns that they were left out of the funding formula. So that dance will go on during the legislative session, there's no doubt. We have a capacity of 31,000 seats across the system. Our enrollment is down to 25,500. Our enrollment projections showing us dropping another 2,500 over the next 10 years. As we continue to look out, that enrollment drop of about the average of about 400 students a year continues in the out years. So this is something we're going to be continuing to deal with. And I said closing schools isn't the way out of this. It is a part of it because we have to provide efficiencies within our system and provide the same educational opportunities at all schools for students, regardless of the number of students. And at this point, because we have 25,000 students and capacity of 31,000 students, we are inefficient. We are overstaffed for teachers. We have classes of 13 and 14 going on in some schools and 30 in others, given the number of students in that school. There is great advantage to having small schools. Absolutely. I agree with all the citizen participation we had that says good education is going on at those schools. It is. I agree. They're wonderful teachers and providing wonderful opportunities for students. The question is, we have to pay for it. We have to pay for it. And right now, we don't have the revenue stream to pay for it. But the reality of our budget is that $1.2 million in there. So it's really a wash. Again, we're very appreciative of it. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't add to our budget. It just sustains it at its current level. So that's why we're talking about $4 million instead of $1.2 million. So just to summarize, what I've heard was that the commissioners still have the same expectation to lower operating costs, to reduce our overheads and right-size our system with the number of students we have, that this money from the governor has to go through the legislative process. The governor's offering opportunity for us to revisit some of the decisions, but it's not contingent on that. This is a reshuffling of funding, not new money. And so everybody's going to have their hand out. And so if we're simply reshuffling money, that means that if we're going to get additional funding because of sustainability, even with declining enrollments, that money's coming from another county. It's not new money being generated into the system, which lends difficulties to organizations who have memberships from all over, such as MAVE and PSAM, to support a reshuffling of money, because if you support a reshuffling of money, then you're supporting taking the money away from other counties and giving to less wealthy counties. So I'm not sure how it all play out, but right now our hope was that there would be additional money coming as opposed to reshuffling of existing state funding.
Mr. Mitchell was pretty clear that the governor is not tying your hands in connection with this $4 million. But he does state pretty clearly in his letter, the next to last sentence, and I'm going to repeat it. It's my belief that this additional financial aid to Carroll County will allow local leaders to defer school closings being considered for next year so that time is available for a more comprehensive plan tailored to ensure the students' educational needs are protected during a transition year. So, I mean, I do believe that that's his wish, and I would ask that you all consider that.
I appreciate
Trump
that.
has also said that the governor thinks that you should leave local issues to local officials. That would be, we were looking at what to do with that.
Well, he also didn't have to include this extra $4 million in stopgap funding to help you all as you go through this process.
You have to acknowledge the fact that whether it's $5 million or $4 million because of the school closing, or $4 million because of money that comes out of the budget process, if one trades off the other, it's the same $4 million. And so when we sit here and say, well, $4 million plus whatever we could possibly do, because I read an article you wrote that said don't increase taxes either. So you didn't like that option either. I know you fought hard for teacher compensation, so I'm not sure what other genie we're supposed to pull out of the bottle here, but if 4,000 doesn't get us there, and we can't tax our way there, what would you like us to do?
Well, I got to tell you, Commissioner Howard, that wasn't my quote. That was a quote from the governor's
I understand.
letter. I'm just stating that
you
for the
reiterate
record.
because I'm sure you agree with it. I agree with the sentiment as well, but my problem is I'm not sure that it's been fully explained that that money we need help in addition to where the school closings would get us. And so at the end of the day, if we just trade one set of dollars for another and put off a decision for a year, all we've really done is taken good money and put it out there to put off a decision a year, but we haven't addressed anything. And we're no closer to being able to tax our way into the solution, which you don't want us to do. So I don't know what we do with that.
All of us here, we've known for a long time that the issue of school closing was something that was going to happen at some point. And I'm not sure it came up in the elections as much as it should have. The school board or other offices, I know it came up some in the school board committee for elections. But we all feel like we've been dealing with this for years, and we have. But the public, in September, hears this plan to close the schools, and for a lot of people in the public, it comes out of nowhere. And, you know, we've got this, the DAC, the group of youth trying to open doors. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that is part of this whole factor. What I'm wondering, is there a way for us to give a little more time, not wait a year, but to have, there's some things I know you couldn't evaluate. School board members have said that there are things that you couldn't necessarily evaluate.
I'd like to say something. First of all, as a parent just 1 year ago, there is never, I never would have thought in a million years that I would be sitting at a table with 15 other elected officials who are all fighting for education in Carroll County. And it is, I know we all have different ideas and we're coming from different places, but we are all sitting up here saying we want to do what's best for our school system. And to me, that is incredible, and it's something that, and it happened to me last week as I was sitting there for 6 hours getting yelled at over and over and over again. Part of me was thinking, this is incredible, because there are so many people here fighting for their kids and their schools and this county, and They may not like the process, they may not like what we're doing, but they believe our schools are worth fighting for. So to me, you know, this has been tough for all of us, so, but I keep that in my mind, and I think this is really, really incredible. For me, the goal has been to improve our instructional program, which means offering full programs at all of our high schools, offering equitable programs at all of our schools, and improving teacher salaries. So my concern, and I do hear what you're saying, and of course we've been listening to the public, and I understand, you know, my concern with delaying the process is this. Delaying for 1 year does not improve our instructional program. It does not improve teacher salaries. It does not decrease the number of empty seats and increase efficiencies. So, you know, that's the struggle there. And the other thing is, you know, in January, high schools start their scheduling process. So if you wait, you know, you're waiting 60 days, 90 days, however many days you're waiting, you're putting those schools, those high school families don't know where they're going. We can't start our scheduling process. They don't know what schools they're taking. We can't staff. There's a lot of things going on. So that is what I want to say.
And I would like to add to that because we have been at this for a lot of years, ever since I've been on the board, and we have cut cleaning staff, maintenance, we changed the budget schedule. We even changed our board meeting. We used to meet twice a month, now we meet once a month. We have cut and we've cut, and last year Mr. Guthrie said to everyone, there is nowhere else to cut. And we had asked, keep our teachers. Let's stay away from the teachers because we want to give our kids the best education we possibly can give them. And yes, what Governor Hogan is doing is wonderful, but it's some things that we cannot afford to do. And like Ms. Rothschild said, it's all about our kids. We've lost teachers. We can't hire the best teachers now. We haven't given our teachers a raise in 6 years. And any other options that we have, it may take 2 or 3 years to put that in action, and that's 9 years we haven't given our teachers a raise. We cannot keep doing that, and we're losing our good teachers. I really hate to see a teacher get an award because 9 times out of 10, they're gone. They're gone to Howard County. Howard County love us because they have our good teachers.
But I want to get back to your original question. The question is, can we delay? In my every
I would not call it delay. I would call elongating the process, increasing what input from experts in areas maybe the AT did not have access. Is that a fair question?
Yes, I can certainly respond to that. I can just say every delay. If we delay a month, we're into course election. So delay of 60 days is a delay of a year. We couldn't implement this. If we get past student course selections, and I've said this already, my expectation is that this decision would have been made in November and not December. I benchmarked after meeting with staff and talking to the various transitions that would happen. If we get into January, it's exceedingly difficult to do everything that we need to do and double check and make sure that everything gets done to close 3 schools and redistrict the students, and all of the staffing implications of that would be very difficult to do, and I wouldn't venture to do it if we get past January. It's just too much to do in 1 year, and that's one of the reasons that I broke it into 2 years and saying we can't do 7 schools in 1 year without significant hardships, not only on staff who would have to implement it, but on layoffs. It would just be very difficult to do. You mean if we close schools, would I need to cut teacher positions?
Just the plan that you have right now. I'm just curious what that number would be. And then I just have one other question.
Well, ultimately, that answer would depend on the amount of revenue I get ultimately from the state and from the county. That would make that decision after that. Right now, we are in a need of additional teachers, not specific to classroom, but I will say that I put in my budget every year except the last year because we just know we were going to get it. We are in need of additional special education teachers, resource teachers, and gifted and talented teachers. I believe that we're meeting the minimum standards of the law in those areas. I would like to expand our offerings in that. So my hope would be with sufficient revenue, instead of decreasing students to teachers with respect consistent with declining enrollment, I can take those attrition positions and repurpose those into those positions to add workload relief for our teachers and also provide better services to our students. Failing that, generally, if we lose another 400 students, that translates to about 20 teacher positions.
But the positions, excuse me, I think the question was, though, in regards to the plan, one of the things we talked about, Mr. Governor, too, is that teachers, the $5 million proposed savings is not in the teacher positions. They will basically go with the students. I mean, I know it's an unsophisticated way of saying, but the kids move, so they got teachers, and the teachers move with them. And in the other position, Mr. Governor's talking about within the needs of the system. But the $5 million did not reflect teacher cuts within that. And that was the operating cost of other cuts and other positions.
But if we want to keep the same pace with declining student enrollments, to keep the same teacher-student ratio, it would be about 20 teachers.
If we have some time to work with, and I'm not an educator, I'm a mom, and I've done these schedules, so I totally understand it. But I've also had kids who change their mind 15 times during the summer, and there is flexibility in scheduling. So I'm just wondering, with the January 30th date that you mentioned, could we not just consider scheduling in February, February, the month to do it? And I'm saying that not as an educator, and I don't mean to cause teachers, undue problems with scheduling, but I'm just asking the question.
Well, my response as a former school counselor and someone who's helped with scheduling, the goal of every high school is to try to get scheduled out before the end of the year. The further you push that out, the less likely that is. I don't know. I mean, yes, anything certainly is possible. The question is the reality. I want to answer your question first, and I have that
Can
question
I
as well.
actually speak to that a little bit more clearly, though, because it's not just a student filing a schedule and having made their choices. There are things, the staffing and so forth. Can you speak to that in the programs that you're offering?
We staff high schools based on student schedules. We don't just staff high schools. We hire teachers based on the courses that students select. And so it is not just scheduling. Hiring is contingent on that too. So it's important that we finish the schedules before the end of the school year, or even in early March, so we know where the course selections are. Principals know where their hirings need to be. And I will tell you, as stated many times, we're not people's first choice because of salary. So we have to get out there early every year to try to attract teachers to come to Carroll County Public Schools. Our problem is not so much as attracting first-year teachers, it's attracting experienced teachers. Our ratio over the past several years is 70% of our new hires are step one first-year teachers, as opposed to 30% coming with experience from other counties. And that's because the higher you are on the salary schedule, the less money you make here as compared to other counties, the way our salaries are structured. And that's something we're going to try to correct. So there's a lot of background things that happen on student schedules. It's not just which student selects which courses. Hiring is based on that. Schedules are laid out, allowing for new students to go to a different school or transfer students to go to a different school, working with the out-of-districts. Everything shoots off when those schedules are done. So it's difficult.
But the reality is if you took that period of time and came up with any different option at all, then you have to go back out to public hearing. We'd go through another public process. We'd have 60 to 90 days of evaluation during that. Now the question also becomes, what if you go through that period of time and come up with the same three schools? And so, I guess the question is, I mean, it's important, I think, for y'all to realize, and I know you do, the period of time that this has been looked at is longer than your entire legislative session. Okay? You make big decisions on what happens in the state in a 90-day period of time. You hear all the hearings, you get all the information, you have less staff in some cases. I know how hard it is because you don't always have staff. But the period of time that you're saying that a decision can't be made is with a lot less other issues going on, less than the time of a legislative session. So I would just ask you to consider that. This is the one issue that's been addressed, not the, how many bills do you guys get, like 2,000 something? 1,000. It is, it's unquestionably flat, but when you have a major issue in front of you, the fact is, it has to be done in that 90-day period of time. We've had every bit that long to look at it. So if there's a reason to delay because we're gonna get something else out of it, or something else that we're gonna be able to do, that's a consideration. But if it's just simply go through the process and then in the end end up with the same situation, then that's a concern. If we end up with a different situation, then we're not talking about January 30th, we're talking about much further beyond that. So I think that needs to be considered.
Issue of the capital costs in our older schools that are still in need, that are not slated for closure. And some people say, oh, that's just a capital cost. Well, it's like saying that my mortgage doesn't come out of my paycheck. You know, the capital costs of what we have out there that we haven't addressed are going to cost us money down the road. And those monies down the road are going to come from the budget that we could put in the operating budget. So I'm still, for myself, trying to understand all this. I think we need to at least explain how we're going to move forward with some of the old facilities that were recommended several years ago for closure. You know, what are we going to do with them? For the North Carroll area, that is a concern of mine that I think we need to talk about, if the school were to close, and we're all, believe me, it's painful for everyone, this has to even be considered, but, you know, what will happen to North Carroll High School? What's going to happen to our proposed career and tech that we all have seen as a priority for many, many years? And I know you still think it's a priority, and in our community it's a priority. So I think all of it, and I know it's a lot to put your arms around, but I think that the North Carroll community, knowing what may happen to their facility, it's a beautiful school, and it's one of our best built schools we've ever had in town. It's getting aged, it's definitely aging, but it'd be nice to know, at least that we're trying to reuse the building for something that's positive for our students, and that that's a possibility. And those conversations, I know it's a lot to do, but
I don't know if they haven't happened but we haven't even voted whether or not we're going to close the school yet. So I think it's a bit, in my opinion, insensitive to start talking about this is what we're going to use your school for. Because frankly, as a board member, I'm sitting here trying to make decisions about the validity of closing the school or not. And while that is an important plan, at the end of the day, it is a county building, and those are conversations that need to be happening, no doubt. And I have no doubt that if it were used for an educational purpose that was valued to the entire community, that the North Carroll community would absolutely appreciate that. I think we'd all appreciate that.
But just having the conversation about that we at least would attempt to do something like that would be helpful to folks. I know it's challenging and you have to make one decision before another, but sometimes it makes it a little more palatable if you know that you're going to have.
That's not expressed in the public feedback.
It is not at all.
Delegate Krebs. In
We've
fact,
gotten a few comments
we've
to
heard a lot of comments that the decision has already been made. In fact, there were rumors of usage, and that those rumors are false. But what I heard is that you already have this plan because here's the usage of that. I think that the feedback we received was that any hint of any use or designated use of North Carroll High School should it close would be an indication to the community that that was a predetermined decision, which it wasn't.